Hey, pastor friends, McKay here, and in this video, I want to share why historical grammatical Bible interpretation is lacking an essential piece of the equation and how to fix it. Now, before you charge me with heresy, I fully endorse the grammatical historical method. As a method, it just has some limiting factors that we can change and make absolutely perfect, right? Grammatical context, absolutely essential. The words of the text. We believe in plenary verbal inspiration. That with historical context. The historical context is essential also. Historical, cultural issues related to the text factor into interpretation, of course. The missing piece is the redemptive context. That's what I learned from my homiletics professor, Brian Chappell, who in his book, Christ-Centered Preaching, uses an illustration of an oak tree and an acorn to describe why the redemptive context is so vitally important. He challenges us to consider the acorn. You can say a lot of good things about an acorn, a lot of true things about an acorn in detail. But if we don't relate it back to the oak from which it fell, then we've missed the most important context of the acorn's existence. The tree from which it fell, the tree into which it will grow. And the same is true with Scripture, because the Bible is like an oak tree, and every text, every theme, every topic is, well, like an acorn. And we may explain that acorn, that text, in great detail. We may expound upon the literary genre, the grammatical nuances in the text. We may describe the historical and cultural factors in great detail and with great profundity. But if we neglect to mention the oak and relate the acorn to the oak, which is the ultimate context of every text, then we will miss the most important part of describing the acorn, or that passage, which we're preaching. Because in the Bible, the oak is the overarching story of redemption. And in biblical theology, we speak of that story in four parts: creation, fall or rebellion, redemption, and restoration, with the ultimate restoration being glorification. Now, if we think of these four parts as DNA of the tree, so to speak, then we can see how the larger redemptive story has four strands of DNA. And if the larger story, the oak, has four strands of DNA, then we would expect that everything that falls from the tree, the oak, for example, will share that four-strand DNA. That's why using this four-strand approach to study, to explain, and to apply every text, it allows us to present the fullness of God's grace, the full gospel story, in every single sermon. And that's what we mean by cross-tethered preaching, that every text, every topic, every theme is taught in view of the cross of Jesus. Now, this framework mirrors the theological framework of creation, fall, redemption, and restoration. We just use PPGR, principle, problem, gospel, and response. The principle, what is true; the problem, how and why do we resist what is true; the gospel, how Jesus redeems our resistance; and then finally, in the response, what grace-motivated, spirit-empowered change is now possible. All this is built into our online preaching studio called Preach 360. If you're interested in this kind of interpretive framework and how it can help you preach the gospel, then check out preach360.com and join a community of pastors from over 20 countries across 6 continents who are learning to preach every acorn of Scripture in view of the larger oak of redemption.